This is a budget frog we just found right in the ditch here, right outside of Philadelphia. We're actually in Philadelphia. This is Lepidopterychus. And this is an adult. I hope. That is a frog. The first frog we're going to have a look at is Leptodactylus bufonius, also known as the shovel-nosed chamber frog. It's a very common frog out in the Chaco of Paraguay, and it has a very interesting life cycle. Now we're out in the Chaco in a pond that is slowly drying out. As the water recedes, the male frog uses the soft mud to dig its foam nest chamber. The nest you're looking at right now has just recently been dug. This nest here has been rained on, and you can see that some of the mud has been washed away, exposing the foam inside. The males do all of the construction of that chamber, which is about 5 or 6 inches deep, and takes 1 or 2 nights to complete. Above ground, the mud is piled high enough over the chamber so that it serves as sort of a depth gauge. That way the chamber won't flood until the water is deep enough to support the tadpoles through metamorphosis. Here we see the male frog excavating the chamber. Most frogs come out to breed after the rains, but this frog can be heard calling on dry, rainless nights. Here we see some sort of courtship behavior I stumbled onto one night. I can't explain what all is going on here, but I can make a couple of observations. The male is on the left and the female is on the right. Listen to that other male calling in the background. Our male here has changed his call in response to the female. It's difficult to hear, but you can watch her sides move as she responds with a reciprocation call. Female reciprocation calls have only been reported in 4 other frog species. Watch as both the male and female are engaged in that strange wiggly presenting behavior. To make things even more complicated, another male appears on the scene. Somehow, she will choose the more worthy of the males, and with his call, he will lead her to his nest site.
This is the female back at the nest site, and I took the tape recorder and played the male's call to her, and she just followed it around wherever I went.
Inside the chamber, the male whips up the female's albumin secretions into a frothy foam nest into which from 250 to 450 eggs are deposited and fertilized. After this, the top of the chamber is capped with mud. In 4 days, the eggs will hatch. Here are the tadpoles swimming in the foam nest. The larvae have several different strategies for surviving while in the nest. They swim in unison to aerate the foam, and the foam contains moisture to keep them from drying out. They conserve water by secreting urates instead of ammonia. They're very sensitive to ammonia, and eventually the foam would become toxic. So what do they eat if they're trapped for days or even weeks inside the foam nest? Well, scientists believe that they metabolize their own tissue, because in studies, the tadpoles actually get smaller the longer they're in the foam nest. So why go to all this trouble to build a mud chamber? Why not just scatter eggs out in a pond like a lot of other species of frogs? One answer is that the rains are very sporadic in the Chaco. With the egg chamber protecting the foam, and the foam protecting the eggs and larvae, the frogs have a greater chance for surviving dry periods. Also, the tadpoles will be the first to occupy the temporary pools, thus they can avoid food and space competition. Watch how this one drop of rain breaks through the top of the mud chamber and exposes the foam. This toad, Bufo granulosus, is utilizing the empty mud chamber of the Leptodactylus bufonius. I'm sure he's doing it because these toads bury themselves during the day to escape from the sun. This is where I found him when I was walking around one day.
I think I got one, Joe. Well, this is the Physiolaemus that you can hear in the background making the cat call. And he's all puffed up. He's ready to call again. Fortunately, we don't need to collect any of these, but they're all around.
This is Physiolaemus albonotatus, also called the false-eyed frog. This 2-inch long frog is also a foam nest builder. So here's the foam nest sitting on top of the water. The water level has dropped, and that's why some of the foam is higher up in the grass. The next rain that comes will wash away the foam and release the tadpoles into the waiting pool of water. One night I found this frog, Physiolaemus boligonidrus, calling. Not more than 12 inches away to the left is another species of frog, Physiolaemus albonotatus. I couldn't show both of them at the same time because my light wasn't strong enough. In a second, you'll hear and see the other frogs start to call. So why are they calling together? Now remember, they are species specific. That means that females can only breed with males of their like kind. There must be some kind of symbiotic relationship going on between the two frogs. By calling off each other, maybe they outcompete lone males who don't seem to have enough stamina or volume to their calls. Physiolaemus natterii shows us the reason that these frogs are called false-eyed frogs. When threatened, these frogs point their rear ends towards the aggressor, puff up, and expose their false eye spots. The theory being that this frog will now look larger and more formidable than the predator had originally anticipated.
That sounds like a... what about this other one you found over here?
That sounds like Phylomedusa. Here we have a Phylomedusa azure. Is that right? Azure? Take a look at this guy. He's real dark. See his stripes. He doesn't want to show us. Look at that. Oh, he's beautiful. A really vivid orange and purple. Come on, guy. This frog has a fascinating method of protecting itself from losing water when conditions in the Chaco are dry. From special glands, it produces a waxy substance that it wipes all over its body. This water-permeable coating significantly reduces evaporative water loss. Then the frog goes into suspended animation, or torpor, until night, when the frog is active and the air temperatures are reduced. This frog was found during the heat of the day in direct sunlight. Here we see a male calling. Breeding occurs from October through April in temporary pools that are full of overhanging vegetation. Even in implexus, with the male on her back, the female moves to the end of a leaf and folds and glues it together, creating a nest. The eggs are fertilized and deposited inside the nest, which has a small opening at each end. The leaf protects the eggs from drying out until they hatch and the tadpoles drop out of the bottom and into the pool of water below. The tadpoles feed on tiny organisms and detritus filtered from the water. This tadpole is almost fully developed and ready to leave the pond. You can see that the new froglet still has a lot of its tail. As it absorbs the tail, it will serve as nourishment for the next several days until the frog learns to catch insects. Philomedusa zurae lives side by side its close relative, another leaf-folding frog, Philomedusa savagei, seen here at night. It's wonderful to observe these animals in the wild. You can see how the rains of early summer not only bring out the frogs, but also the flowers that camouflage them. This frog has been known to drink from its mouth, which is surprising, since virtually all other frogs absorb moisture through their skin. The monkey tree frog, as it is called in the pet trade, ranges throughout the Gran Chaco, Paraguay, northern Argentina, and southern Bolivia.
Good leech.
Okay, Paul and Joe are out here swimming.
Going in. Going under.
Swimming. This pond is infested with literally thousands of leeches.
All right, what do we
Let's
got?
see what they brought up.
Wait a minute. See nothing?
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
I see something.
Something's
Ooh,
wiggling.
that's a good size one.
Yeah.
There's another one
Wait,
by
wait,
your hand.
Look at the size of that leech.
No, that's Sudus.
That's a tadpole.
Is that
Oh,
it?
it's got legs on it, too.
Fall right there in the light.
There's one.
Another one here.
Well,
Ooh, that's
that
even bigger.
first swipe
Oh,
was
yeah.
productive.
Now we're cooking.
Ah, look at the size of
Back
that.
legs on it?
Is that a Sudus?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He doesn't have the things on his head.
Well, as they develop, the crest behind them diminishes. Okay, he's got back legs already.
I got it. Here, Wendy, you got the thing on?
Yeah. Go
Can
ahead
you see it
and...
in my hand?
Does anybody want?
There we go. Yeah.
You see how big
Is
it is?
is that even full grown? I guess so. If it's getting
Well,
legs,
it's starting to shrink,
it's going to be...
actually.
That's about 6 or 7, well, about 6 inches there. Here we see the paradox frog in comparison to the tadpole. The adult on the left here is about 2.5, 3 inches long, and the tadpole on the right, still about 4 inches in total length, will ultimately reach about 7 or 8 or even more, hence the name paradox frog.
The male paradox frog frequently calls as he floats on the water's surface, often away from shore and in deep water, which makes him difficult to catch and also makes it really difficult to take video of them calling. I've weighed it out as far as I can go, and then I'm spotting them out here and holding the camera on full zoom but it makes it pretty hard because the camera wiggles around a lot. But through persistence, I have caught him in the act of calling.
Lysapsis limalis is the only relative of the paradox frog. This frog is less than an inch long and is totally aquatic, except for when perched on floating vegetation. Mating season is from September to April. The frogs attach their eggs to leaves and roots of floating plants. We also caught paradox frogs and their tadpoles in this pond, along with a knife fish and a very cool eel. This one is calling at night, but Lysapsis is commonly heard calling in the daytime. Some frogs spend most of their lives underground and only surface to breed, like this narrowmouth frog, Dermatinotus muelleri. This burrowing frog with its small mouth and pointed nose feeds mostly on subterranean ants and termites. It can emit a secretion through its skin that hardens and protects the frog from the stings and bites from the ants and termites when it invades their nests. Imagine what a few hundred of these soldiers would do to the flesh of an unprotected frog. Breeding commences with the first downpours of the rainy season. Males call as they float on temporary pools of water, and when they find a mate, they go into amplexus and lay their eggs on the bottom of the pond. I tried to videotape this frog while calling for the whole trip, and this was the best I could do.
One of the frogs that was very high on my list to collect was this small microhylid frog. Less than an inch in length, these guys live underground, and it took literally the entire afternoon to find and dig this one out.
This is Leptodactylus laticeps, or the red-spotted burrow frog. The name was given to it because it lives in rodent burrows. We only caught one of these softball-sized frogs. What the frog is doing now is a defensive behavior. It's trying to make itself look bigger because it feels threatened. Supposedly, a lot of people who live in the Chaco are afraid of this frog because of its aggressive behavior. The frog's skin is very slippery and toxic, and when Paul caught it, the frog's toxins burned his hands where he had some small cuts. This is another predatory frog that feeds on small frogs. Now we're in eastern Paraguay. This is the habitat of one of the few endemic frogs of Paraguay, Hyla polytanea. I couldn't find any information about this frog because I don't think there is any information about this frog. So I'm just going to show you where we found them. We found a male calling in the bushes right there at the top of the falls. Of the approximately 22 species of hylid frogs that occur in Paraguay, only 2 are endemic, this one and another species of synax. Hylid show a wide variety of reproductive strategies, but most simply lay large numbers of eggs in open water.
Alright, we've got all of our stuff. We went in here last night. We have water, we have batteries, we have flashlights, we have cameras, and we're probably going to get about somewhere over our knees.
Last night we were very fortunate. We found a couple of interesting tree frogs. They may be new for the country. They may even be a new species, so we're trying to catch a couple more to complete the series.
So we're going in. And it's cold.
You want to come here and get a shot of this, Joe?
And this is how it goes.
All night long, hours and hours.
But the water's crystal clear. You can't see it, but down in here there's Placosimus, another sort of
Catfish.
tropical fish that you see in pet stores even. So this is the frog that we found in the stream. It's actually Osteocephalus landorfi, which is a frog known to occur just across the border in Brazil. Sometimes when I see an animal that's been around in the pet trade for years, I wonder, where do these animals actually occur in the wild? So what you're looking at now is the habitat of Ceratophrys cranwelli, one of the Pac-Man frogs. In the pet trade, they always feed these guys pinky mice, but in the wild, they're in fact frog predators. Look at how its eyes stick up on the top of its head. That way it can sneak around unnoticed and capture and eat other frogs. Chacophrys parodi, at approximately 1.5 inches long, is about half the size of the Ceratophrys. This frog adapts to the dry conditions by burrowing underground. Numerous layers of epidermal tissue build up around the frog to form a cocoon. The cocoon protects the frog from evaporation during the long dry season. Once they've sunk down into the mud and formed the cocoon, their metabolic rate slows down, and this results in lower oxygen consumption. This is Lepidopterychus asper, the budget's frog, and it's eating another frog, Dermatognotus muelleri. I put it up on land so you can see it, but they rarely come up on land, if at all. This frog preys on frogs, and it also eats snails. You can see its periscope-like eyes situated on the top of its head. It was hard to find these frogs. They would surface in the muddy water with only their eyes showing. I was lucky that one surfaced next to me and I caught it with the net. These frogs also cocoon themselves in the dry season.
Bring it up.
No.
Oh my. Not exactly paradox, but look at these things. These are fantastic. I gotta rinse these off. Look at that. These are the newly and here's a completely metamorphosed one. These are the budget's frogs, Lepidopterychus asper. Fantastic.
This is the tadpole stage of the budget's frog, and you can see that it's almost fully developed. It has a large, wide mouth it uses to eat, swallow, and consume large numbers of tadpoles and froglets. So you can imagine that if you're a late arrival to the pond, your tadpoles would have to deal with this guy. See what happens when you get too close to that mouth? Goodbye. This is Hylopunctata. You see them in the pet trade sometimes under the name spotted tree frog. These frogs range all over South America, from Colombia to northern Argentina. They get about 1.5 inches long and live in swampy areas. Obviously, this frog is semi-transparent, and here we can see its bone structure and its heart beating. Another tree frog, Hylaraniceps, can always be distinguished by its loud, raspy call. This 2.5-inch long frog inhabits all of the Gran Chaco. From the forests of eastern Paraguay, we find this large tree frog, Hyla faber. Males get 3 inches or more snout to vent. This is an example of a highwood species where the male is larger than the female. Why is this? Males build shallow basin-like nests along streams from where they call, attract females, and lay their eggs. The males are territorial and aggressively defend their nests from rival males. So in this case, natural selection favors the stronger, larger male.
Well, these
It's wild because it looks like, with Wendy here, it looks like, yeah. How many herps have we seen?
In round numbers, 0. We're not here for
How many bugs have we seen? 8,000 gazillion million trillion.
Hold on a sec, Joe. Put your light back there. Is that a frog over
You
there?
can do that, and if you tell me shore, I'll go to the shore.
Oh, okay. There it is, Joe. This is a large one. This is that species that's commonly found through Central and South America, Phrynohyas venulosus. There are many common names to this species: chicken frog, latex frog, all manner of names. It's one of the largest tree frogs we have in the New World. They can get 3 or 4 inches in length. What's really interesting about this species is its defense. If you capture it, molest it, do anything to it, it exudes this thick latex-like glue. Anything that tries to eat it or touch it becomes stuck to it. And literally, it's extremely poisonous as well. So it's able to evade any predators.
See that moth? See that grasshopper? See that pair of frogs that are actually smaller than the grasshopper? That's a pair of Hylanana, the smallest frog species in the Chaco. Huge densities of these frogs call after rains. They're food items for all sorts of animals, like herons, egrets, snakes, and even other larger frogs.
Oh, I'm so hungry. One ant, just a mosquito, anything.
Oh, here's a frog right here.
Uh-oh, he's got his light right on me. I should have jumped. Oh man, he's got a net too. This is it? I'm gonna end up in a jar of formalin on some museum shelf? Or on the end of a hook trolling for bass? This is terrible. Wait a minute. Is that a moth? That is a moth. I've been waiting here all night. I'm starving. Hey, buddy, don't move that light. Wonderful, chewy moth. Thank God he showed up.
Oh, he's getting away.
Leptodactylid frogs have really interesting life cycles, including some that exhibit parental care of the larva. Like this frog here, some are difficult to identify and almost impossible to catch in the act of calling. I've been sitting here for literally 2 hours now, patiently waiting for this frog to call. Here's the big moment. Thank you, Mr. Frog. This 1-inch long tree frog is commonly known as the washroom frog. named because that's where people who live in the Chaco usually find them. Here are a pair of toads we found in eastern Paraguay. This is Bufo crucifer, a forest-dwelling toad.
This toad is called Bufo pericnemus, and it's a huge toad. Supposedly the largest toad in the world is Bufo marinus, but I've caught Bufo marinus and I've caught Bufo pericnemus, and these toads actually seem larger to me. These toads are so huge we had to get out of the car and move them out of the way. They're like speed bumps.
Here are some newly metamorphosed toadlets of Bufo pericnemus. We found them in this ditch on the side of the road in that foamy water. This toad's greatest defense when harassed by predators is the milky substance it secretes from its large parotid glands. When it's absorbed through the animal's mucous membranes, it can cause nausea, vomiting, and in larger quantities, even paralysis and death.